What's going on? It's Preacher. Now, BfA is ramping up hardcore. It's coming out in 4 months. We've even got raid testing next week, despite I definitely know a lot of raiders, even those who've killed Mythic Argus, do not have access to the alpha just now, which is a weird one, but who knows? It's going to pick up over the next few weeks here. So what we're looking at today is updating you on everything and also assessing and talking about the frustrations of BfA Alpha and the different twists that Blizzard's taken this time compared to previous alphas and betas, where this time it doesn't appear like the feedback is that important as they're so far along with it, something I mentioned in a previous video. This has also levied a lot of criticism against me personally. You might have seen recently lots of threads, although they're all made by one guy who gets his kicks out of it, saying that we were being too harsh on it. Many of you might find that quite surprising because if you check our channel and you just watch us on YouTube, you will notice that we made zero negative videos about BfA, other than the fact that the classes were unfinished and therefore we weren't going to look at the classes individually until such time as they were ready to be looked at. So why is all this criticism there? Well, let's jump into it. Over the past few weeks, Blizzard's been pouring more and more people into the BfA Alpha. Yes, I know not everybody's got it, but every day, seemingly more and more people are getting access. And a lot of the forums are now filling up with all these varied people expressing the same frustration that I saw, which led to many threads being created about my content and including people describing me as being an angry YouTuber. I don't think that's the case whatsoever, and I think most people backed me up on that that's not the situation. What we do have though is frustration. Frustration with a lack of guidance or principles or ideas of where we're supposed to go. Partly, this is due to probably the community's general idea on what feedback is. It's usually very negative, and regardless of what it is, there's always somebody who's not going to be happy. Usually those guys are quite vocal. We recently had a community manager who was outspoken about this, saying that they're aggressively pessimistic. And therefore, sometimes it's actually better not to tell the community what we're doing because it's just going to be met with backlash, bad PR, and so on and so forth, regardless of whether Blizzard thinks it's actually a good thing. I also recently brought up that I believe, and this is a personal belief, and I have no proof to back this up, but my personal belief from playing a lot of betas and alphas is that it feels as though internally Blizzard's way ahead of what they're releasing to us in the alpha and the beta, and they're not actually looking for that much feedback in terms of what they're doing in the game. We could look at some examples as to where I've got this from. I haven't plucked this from the air, and some real world examples you guys can check. Let's take the global cooldown change, for example. If we go over to the EU forums, which were recently changed to BfA, were previously called Legion, we can see the threads are popping up there with no blue response whatsoever regarding the global cooldown change, almost universally negative. In fact, the only positive I found is from what I would consider, and I don't mean to label everybody, selfish individuals who claim that, one, this change doesn't affect me very much because my class doesn't actually carry many global cooldowns, or haha, welcome to our world. Like, almost like I've suffered with a global cooldown in the past, now you guys can suffer too. A very hateful and mean-spirited thing and not caring for other people. Recently, I've had my mind changed on a number of things. If we talked about Master Looter, for example, when the suggestion was made by Blizzard that Master Looter should be removed from the game, in fact, a universal personal loot system should be enforced on guilds without any choice whatsoever. As somebody who's used Master Looter since Wrath of the Lich King with zero problems, and in fact has more than played into what I enjoy, which is killing the boss, moving on to the next boss as quickly as possible with my friends while somebody else sorts out the loot, then I find that a negative change, an extremely negative change. However, lots of people have come forward and told me quite openly is that the Master Looter system is definitely being abused, not only widespread in heroic guilds, but also in very high mythic guilds. Throughout the core of the game, some people are still abusing Master Looter, and people stick around for a varied number of reasons. One in the heroic guilds could be their chance to step up into actually raiding, something I've encouraged, and from people in the mythic guilds is because the guild is simply too good to leave. You'd rather put up with a little bit of abuse on loot in order to make sure that they clear raids in a progress and timely manner. You could draw your own conclusions on that one. But I think the biggest thing that we're dealing with in terms of generating this frustration is the mystery. There's a huge amount of mystery from Blizzard. They're not communicating anything to us, and that makes trying to make the game better for everybody, which is my goal, very difficult because we don't know where Blizzard's trying to get to, and what we get is bits and pieces of the road, but we're not sure what the destination is. We're not sure whether we're on the right road to reach that destination. Suppose Blizzard tells us what exactly the real final goal of the global cooldown change is, as we've had the global cooldown change debunked not only from the PvE side, because as I said, universally, it feels terrible, regardless of how long they extend the cooldowns to try and make up for it. The feel of the game feels terrible in most cases, but the very top PvPers are also saying this is not a change we want. We do not want this system, and put forward a great deal of suggestions. On the US forums alone, the thread has something like 375 replies who are trying to encourage Blizzard to change this back. No feedback whatsoever from Blizzard, no sign of change, despite an enormous number of people contributing as to why they dislike this and would prefer it not to happen. That says a lot. That says a lot. If you're getting this much backlash from a change, yet you are choosing to ignore it, yeah, that's very frustrating. Because it's seemingly like none of us want this, we're doing it anyway. Okay, is that the message we should get for BfA? The greatest mystery, of course, is actually the Azerite Armor. When BfA launched, I should have been rubbing my heels together, baby! It's gold rush time, because we can produce lots of content, as we've done in the past, looking into BfA and trying to get some information out there. Now, as a demonetized channel, that's not the case anymore. I don't need to worry about getting every scrap of information out about BfA. That's not what we're here to do. I can reserve myself for more important issues and make content as and when I feel it's ready. And judging at the classes, which is what I usually look at, I decided I'd make a video that says, you know what? Watcher tells us the Azerite Armor is going to fill the holes in these classes. Right now, the classes don't feel too great, and Azerite Armor is supposed to fix it. That is their words, not mine. That is exactly what we were told. So when I go on Judge a Class and I see, well, it's not playing correctly, the correct decision in my mind is not to just spam videos out, but in fact to say, okay, we'll take a breath and we'll wait until the Azerite Armor comes out so we can piece this all together and we can see what's going to happen. Now, unfortunately, the Azerite Armor did arrive, but it arrived piecemeal, as many things on BfA have. To give some context, when new content has been added to BfA Alpha over the past month or so, it has always come semi-broken, not really working, difficult to find, awkward, lazy, is exactly how I would describe it, as if it's not been tested before, because there are very obvious issues with it very early on that could be found in the first 10 minutes of testing, such as being unable to take the quests without being able to find where they are when somebody else has found them. And that's a very difficult thing to do. The zoned quest lines don't really work. There are graphics and glitches and holes in the floors absolutely everywhere in busy central areas of the game, which would be very easy to find, yet they're releasing it to us. And it feels like, what do you really want us to test here? We can do our best and we can muddle through and then try and put some feedback together for you, but you clearly know this isn't what the final product is supposed to be, or probably even close to the final product. Makes it very difficult. Azerite Armor is the big one. Azerite Armor arrived on the alpha, and they gave us one out of the 3 pieces each character is supposed to wear. Remember, this is the new thing. This armor does not Titan Forge. This is your new artifact weapons. It's your new Nether Crucible. It is all those things rolled into one. And let's bear in mind, this is a very big deal for a number of classes. While we checked out the math on it, some classes, like say a Frost DK, are only losing 1 or 2 things with the loss of their artifact weapons. The rest of the stuff is passive damage bonuses. If we look at something like a Fire Mage, they're losing about 13 things, right? 13 things that interact with their spells in different ways. So we're looking for a lot from the Azerite Armor. We've also had some stuff taken away and returned to us in the form of artifact abilities that seem to tick over, and legendaries. You've got to remember, we're not only losing artifact weapons, we're also losing Nether Crucible, and we're losing legendaries. This is a big deal. That's a lot of gameplay that's going to disappear. Now, the idea of this artifact system when it was first announced is very good. The artifact system is supposed to enable Blizzard to add things into the game with no repercussions should they take it away. If things don't work, they can simply drop it with the removal of the artifact weapons, similar to how the Azerite Armor will no doubt die at the end of BfA. But if there's anything really good that the players like, then they can bake that into the class. Problem is, Blizzard no longer really wants to bake anything into the class. The game is going to go on too long, it might go on for another decade. Adding things permanently to the class and then taking them away is a big problem. So what they've done this time is anything that was really good is they've added it into the talent tree. That also means we've lost something. It might have not been very good, I can accept that, but we definitely have lost something in order to make room for these extra things coming in. And that means simultaneously, that's not a game. That's not a gain on what we currently have in Legion. So the Azerite Armor had a lot to live up to, yet it's shrouded in mystery. It's shrouded in mystery. Blizzard haven't shown us any idea whatsoever of what the Azerite Armor is supposed to be like when it's working together and when it's filling in all these gaps they talk about. We have no idea what the destination is. And we certainly don't know from what they released to us on the alpha whether or not we're on the right road to get there. We can guess, and that's what the big frustration is that we're seeing on the forums with these masses of threads who are saying, what exactly do you want us to test here? So they released the one piece of Azerite Armor per class, and it was the chest piece. So that's one of 3. So if we think of this as a picture, we have a third of the picture. We don't know what the final picture is supposed to look like. We have a third of the picture. And it came with a lot of interesting things that I think a lot of people were taken aback by. What is Blizzard's intention with the Azerite Armor? What are they trying to get out of it? So we have a few ideas, and with the best information we've actually had back wasn't from Blizzard directly in terms of patch notes or a developer blog or some sort of feedback. It was actually by being directly asked at PAX over this last weekend, thanks to Sluty, who went out there in his Gandalf style with that mustache and actually straight up asked them, and that's when we got far more details. When the Azerite Armor came out, the first thing people notice is that the first tier of bonuses that you can choose for your class aren't spec specific. What they are is one universal trait that every spec in the game gets, and then there's one spec specific per spec. So you'll have 4 choices generally. So let's take the Hunter, for example. So what we have with the Hunter is a universal trait shared amongst everybody in the game. Then we have 1 trait for Marksman, 1 trait for BM, 1 trait for Survival. So there's no choice there. That's not a choice. That's not a choice that a player is actively engaging with or thinking about. If you're MM, you want to take the MM one. You don't have much choice. People then realized that you couldn't swap it. And that's a big problem. They also realize that through the 4 traits, they get less interesting as you go higher, ultimately ending with the final trait, which was just a straight increase in item level. That's the final big reward for this particular piece of armor. And remember what I said there, this particular piece of armor. And that was it. They said test it. They gave us the Azerite Armor. They said test it. Okay, what should we test here? Do we test whether the traits work? Some don't, some do. Can we do anything with them gameplay-wise? No, they're almost entirely passive. And what else do you want us to test? I'm not sure. And this is the question that people are running into when they log into BfA for the first time and they actually want to do some testing is, what exactly do you want us to test with this thing? Can I click the button? Is that it? What are we looking to do here? Because I have a third of a picture and I have no choice with this whatsoever. So what is it exactly you want me to do with it? So some feedback we got is, one, can we respec it? Because the grim reality started to form on some people that, hey, wait a minute. If I can't respec this, then I'm going to need to find 3 items per spec for most classes per 3 slots. That's 9 items if I want to play my other specs. So if you play, say, a Shaman and you want to do healing, Ellie, and of course enhancement, then you're going to need 3 separate chest pieces. I think it's shoulders and head. 3 separate shoulders and 3 separate head pieces to play those. This is against what we did in Warlords of Draenor. In Warlords of Draenor, we made the armor dynamic. So especially with tier sets, that if you you no longer were required to farm multiple tier sets for your spec. That's not the way it was going to work anymore. Once you respect, this would swap with you to save you having to farm multiple pieces. Now here's the question. Is this Blizzard's intention? Is this why it's shrouded in mystery? Is it because they don't really know where it's going to end up? Part of the PAX feedback was also that raid tiers, the Azerite Armor that drops in raids will be different, and it will have maybe more complex stuff on it, more difficult stuff. What message does that send out? I'm not sure. I know from personal experience the casual player base is not universally bad. There are bad players out there, and there's a hell of a lot of them. But if you tell people, hey, if you want the interesting stuff, you're going to have to raid for it. Maybe it's available in Alpha, maybe it's available in normal. It doesn't matter. That's where that's going to be. What now? We'll think about how many tier sets you're bringing up. Perhaps there is an open world set, and this is where I may surprise you. When I saw the Azerite Armor, I got bombarded with tweets, messages, and forum people who were saying, can't wait for Preach to shit all over this. I did not. In fact, if this is what we think it is, and this is the problem again, we're guessing. We're guessing. If this Azerite Armor is what we suspect it is, which is leveling gear and open world gear, it's actually really good. And I'm not being sarcastic there. It's actually really good for that task. You got to remember, open world play is different than group play. In open world, you generally don't have anybody with you. You have no healer. Things like that. You're generally killing a lot of low health mobs back to back, and then maybe dealing with a rare or a boss every now and again. So, if you give me a piece of Azerite Armor that has procs that occur when we kill things, that makes a lot of sense in the open world. You also gave me a shield which prevents damage, similar to Pride has. That makes sense in the open world. That prevents me being dismounted. This is a really good piece to have out in the open world, and it was something I would absolutely wear on my main character. If I was going to do open world character, open world content, I would absolutely wear something like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. But then people start to think about it. What if the sets are different in Mythic Plus? What if they're different in raids? What if they're also different in PvP? And suddenly, if you play multiple specs especially, suddenly you're building up an entire arsenal of armor just to be able to do that content efficiently. It gets even worse if you consider that the traits on the armor will be different depending on the source. That means there will be traits that are better for AoE, better for single target. So for one spec alone, let alone the 3, 4, or 2 your class might carry, you might be looking at something like 5 or 6 chest piece, 5 or 6 heads and 5 or 6 shoulders, just to make that spec play as you want it to play. Is that necessarily a negative if that's what Blizzard's doing? I don't think so. For me, yes, I don't want to farm that much. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to play the spec I want to play. So as somebody who intends to tank or DPS or heal, then I have to be aware that sometimes I'm going to have to do one of my opposite roles in BfA. That means I have to farm a lot of items to do that effectively. I have to farm a lot of items. But if we cast our minds back to, say, I don't know, classic WoW, a huge portion of the player base was very, very happy, very, very busy, very, very content to spend a lot of time farming sets, particularly tier 0 and tier 0.5. And that meant a lot of farming of content they could absolutely do, hoping for drops that matched up with what they were aiming to do. Is Blizzard trying to recapture that? Maybe. Don't know. They won't tell us what they're trying to do with it. They have not been happy with the feedback, but they're still being very secretive about it. We did learn that you can respec your Azerite Armor. They're going to allow you to do it, but they don't know how often, which indicates to me they don't really want you to do that. They want you to get your best piece of Azerite Armor that comes for your spec, and if you want one for a different spec, you're gonna have to find another one. You're gonna have to go and get another one. That's the intention, it seems to be. And I feel now people have asked to respec that they may go a slightly different way with it. Now bear with me here, because we're talking very, very theoretical stuff. Potentially, yes, let's say you get Dungeon 1, Taldagor, or whatever it is, you get an Azerite chest piece. Cool. Awesome. I have my Azerite chest, and it has the best trait for marksman. Of course, it carries a trait for BM and survival and the global one, but it's the best trait I want for, say, single target boss damage for my hunter. Cool. I can respec it. Should I need to play BM at some point, I can respec it. If I need to go Beastmaster, I can respec it. Whatever this time frame is, I can do that. But it is not going to be the best BM trait. It'll be something, so it's not the worst by any means. It's better than having none, but not the best. In fact, that chest piece lies in a different dungeon. That lies in Freehold, or it lies in the Motherlode, whatever it might be. So while I can respec it, realistically speaking, the design of this armor is actually to go and farm multiple pieces so you can piece it together as and when you want. Some people will look at this in different ways. You're either going to say, that sounds awful and I really don't want to be farming that much gear. I'm kind of in that camp, but I'm generally quite lazy when it comes to farming. I don't enjoy it. I want to get my best gear from the hardest content. I want to do the hardest content, and the best gear will come naturally to me through there. And according to Blizz, that's probably how it is going to work. For other people, though, that's a ton of goals to hit. I'm working on my BM set today. I'm trying to get the chest for MM. I'm trying to get the chest for Holy Priest. I'm trying to get the head that pairs up really nicely with the other tier sets I've got for Discipline. That's what's going to be happening, I think. I think that's why they're going with it. And I think if they announce that's what they want to do, it would probably be really negative. Although I can absolutely see, and I can say this without trying to be some sort of eternal optimist in Blizzard, that there are a huge amount of people who would probably hate the sound of it, but would actually probably quite enjoy going for it and trying to get the best stuff. Doesn't matter if it's blue, purple, or orange. Doesn't matter. If they know it's the best piece for what they're doing, they're going to be more than happy. The mystery. Did we bring it on ourselves? I don't know. But there you go. And there you go. That's all the thoughts that I have on BfA right now. It looks to be getting better and better every single time. And you might have been surprised that no, I did not dislike. I did not dislike the Azerite Armor when I first read it. I'm sure so many of you were ready to be pounced all over it and rip it to shreds. But no, that wasn't the case at all. I actually thought this could be good in this environment. But we're looking once again and sharing in the frustration that many players are now feeling is, what are you actually going to give us? So maybe the raid testing will show us that. Maybe they'll give us some Azerite Armor to mess around with, some potential replacements for the tier sets. But let's face facts, we've lost a hell of a lot and we're still waiting for that new spice to come along. That's all we're asking for, Blizz. We just want to know, where is our end goal? Where is our destination? All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again next week with another BfA update, because I imagine every single week there's going to be a lot of stuff that we need to talk about. See you again. Bye-bye.